I firmly believe if you have the mentality where you're more competitive, and it's okay to be competitive, but in a way that's not supportive of your friends, the music industry is not for you. It's 100% a collaborative space. And like I said, most of the guys I meet backstage taking shots, ripping shots with are the guys that are helping my career every second.
Yeah.
They're the guys who introduced me to stuff, booked me for shows, and the ones who really just escalated me from a nobody to kind of becoming a somebody now.
We Gucci?
Yep, we're good.
Let's roll. All right. Hey, what's happening, fam? My name is Vince, and this is The Inflection. It's a show with ordinary people on the extraordinary come up. And today, I'm joined by Nguyen. By day, he's a rock star operator in the world of tech startups, and by night, he's better known as Muse, a rising EDM artist you may have caught at the Belasco LA or Coachella. And after recently signing with Wave Music and off the momentum of some fire releases such as Unbroken and Die in Your Arms, he's been cruising past a couple 100,000 monthly streams. Check out his debut EP, Universe, available now for some certified EDM bangers. Welcome, dude. Thanks for coming on. It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, that's quite the intro. Thank you. I hope I'll live up to that intro. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. I mean, like, the first thing that I'll say is just that, like, A, congrats on getting signed, but like, B, you know, I have a lot of respect for people like you. It's incredible. Like, there are definitely countless, probably millions of kids out there who have a real heart for the music industry. And it's really easy to get discouraged, right? In the early days where, like, not only society, but your family, your friends are like cautioning you. They're, you know, almost clowning you for pursuing these like pipe dreams. But you've managed to unlock one of the hardest milestones that kids dream about, like getting signed to a label, and it's literally just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's funny you say that. You know, I think back to the earliest moments of how I got in. Well, actually, you know, let me tell you about how I got into music production. Maybe that'll like give more context to the story. But ironically, you know, it happened very late in my life. I say late because now I'm seeing all of these 14, 15-year-olds in my Discord channel who are incredible producers from like Indonesia, Philippines. And I was thinking like, what was I doing at 15? Playing MapleStory or something at home, pretending like I was doing homework with our friends. I was like, that's what I was doing when I was 12. But basically, you know, it's a funny story how I got into music production itself. So I've always been involved with music, like playing musical instruments my entire life. But you know, it wasn't until like end of college that I got into production. And how it happened was, I recall a meeting my fall semester senior year, and my marshal, my USC counselor, called me in and was like, "Hey, are you ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, senior year is gonna be like super fun." And she was like, "No, you're graduating this semester." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And she basically told me I had enough credit to graduate, like, you know, this fall semester. And I basically started poking, like, you know, is there anything I can do? You know, extra classes I can take that, you know, would perhaps push me over one quarter.
Yeah.
And then luckily she told me about this brand new music production minor they had. And the reason why I was able to take this minor up was because I actually started a jazz piano minor earlier on in my college career. But I ended up dropping it because there was just a lot of night classes that I thought it'd be like, you know, social suicide. And I just didn't want all those like night classes, you know, Tuesday, Thursdays, every week at like 7 p.m. classes. Didn't want that. So I dropped that. But, you know, luckily because some of the credits carried over, I was able to pick up that minor. And admittedly, like, you know, in like hindsight, if I took all those classes now, knowing what I knew, I think I'd benefit a lot more from it. But if anything, I give a lot of appreciation to that opportunity because it got my feet wet, and it really just opened my world up to, you know, production in general. And like I always knew about EDM and whatnot, but it definitely got me a lot more interested now that I started understanding, you know, the nuts and bolts of how everything works. So that's kind of a high level how I got production. And why it was funny is because, you know, I think about all those moments where, you know, right when I got into it, just hey man, check out my stuff, listening to it, you know, thinking it was the hottest shit in the world. Now listening back to that stuff, it's like super cringe. But you know, like those are some of the fonder moments I think about. Some of the non-fond moments I think about is back like in college where people like kind of found out I started getting into EDM or like, you know, DJing even. And just like explicitly hearing people kind of in the back hallway saying, "Oh yeah, Martin will never DJ a party. Like, why would he even think about doing that kind of stuff?" Those are the moments that, you know, I look back and like, wow, like, well, you know, wish they were here to see this. Yeah, so there's definitely a bit of both.
Yeah. That's funny that you say that. I recently had a conversation with one of my buddies. We were talking about that phenomenon of like looking back at certain points of your life and like even like pictures of yourself or work that you produced. And like, I totally understand that feeling of cringe, you know, but then like there's been a turning point, at least like for me, where before I hated that cringe feeling where it's like, oh, like I was so bad at this X, Y, and Z before, or like, oh, I was so cringe before. But now I appreciate it because the more you feel that cringe feeling, it's like the more it's a demonstration of how much you've grown since. So, you know, it's like, it's almost like a beautiful thing to constantly be feeling.
I see it both ways, you know, like as you mentioned, part of my life is music and the other part is, you know, I work in San Francisco at tech startups. And, you know, looking back, some of these defining moments, I remember there was two very defining moments that are, you know, totally random in my life. Is once when I was like in 7th grade for Black Friday or something, I was shopping, walking through the mall with my cousin, we walked through J. Crew, my cousin Anthony, and then we were mostly like, you know, wow, this stuff here is so expensive, you know, to a 7th grader. If you could ever buy anything from here, you like made it in life. You know, think about that. You know, obviously, it's not cheap by any means. Like it's accessible to somebody who has, you know, a full-time career. To think like, you know, how like, at what point that moment happened. Obviously, I didn't celebrate with the party, but just think about like, you know, at one point in time, I told myself that, and I thought back to that moment. There was actually a second moment. It's very similar. It was, I think, post sophomore year of college. I came up to San Francisco to do a little bit of networking. And, you know, my mentor was in a building downtown San Francisco. And I looked over to the right and I saw Telegraph Hill, basically a neighborhood right next to Financial District. But what like blew me away was like, wow, there's this collection of houses on a hill right next to downtown, which must be super expensive in San Francisco. Like it must cost a fortune to live there kind of thing. And then like, you know, sure enough, like a couple years out of college, like that was actually one of the neighborhoods my roommates and I moved to. I don't live there now anymore, but I think back to that moment, you know, all the time where I looked up at the hill and I was like, damn, like if I ever get to come to San Francisco and work here, and then, you know, the next step is, wow, if I could ever even live in that area. So those are the moments that like, I think back, have very fond memories of. Obviously, I don't live my life working towards those goals, but the fact that they kind of eclipse and happen when you don't even realize it, and then you think back to them. I think those are super fond memories.
I love that. And kind of like going back to those early days, you pick up production at SC, like that maybe like opened your eyes to it, but like, how did you really like learn? There's a lot of, you know, there's theory, there's technical skills, there's like software that you have to learn. Is that all self-taught? Is that YouTube? What is that?
Totally. So I think there is a misconception that, you know, because I have a musical theory background and I have a, you know, a solid fundamental understanding of music, it's dramatically helped me in music production. And while it has helped me in certain parts of production, like, you know, creating melodies and whatnot, I think music production itself is a totally different beast because you're, like you said, you're learning the software, you're learning really the formula, like what it takes to put together a song, right? And then once you identify the formula, it's not just as easy, just, you know, putting 1 + 2 = 3. It's like identifying the right things to use when the different settings on each, you know, software and whatnot. And so I think the beauty of that though is that there's so many household big name DJs, music producers that are killing in the industry who have no knowledge of music theory as how we define it, at least traditionally. But that's the beauty of it, you know, because you're able to do that with that actual fundamental understanding of traditional music theory and still create incredible music. And that's why I think, you know, music production has opened up so many doors for so many people who obviously love music, but don't understand it in the traditional classical sense, what, you know, our predecessors or sorry, previous generation may have understood music. And so I think being a generally, you know, technical person, I've always loved exploring under the hood, you know, whether it was understanding, I don't know, a car, how the world works, you know, how things are made. I think how it's made is up on one of my favorite like series because it's just random.
Hell yeah. Is that the Discovery Channel thing? Yeah. I love that.
Just like random things like that. I think having that mindset going into music is definitely how I approach it. Because once I started, you know, taking these classes, I started identifying like, oh, there's this component or that component. Then I start basically, I start isolating them while listening to this music. And then from those, I think those moments, I start being able to try to recreate it. Like I look at music, obviously still as an art, but if anything, like it's almost like a game for me to try to identify all the different components of a song. Like how did someone make that? How did someone create that? And it's almost like challenging yet fun for me, like inquisitive. I will say though, not that it's ruined music for me by any means, but having that, mindset, it's tough for me to listen to a song just like straight up, just listen to a song without trying to dissect every little thing. Because I'm always looking out for that now. And I think that's true with any work of art, any artist in respective field, right? Like when you understand how things are happening under the hood, it's going to be very hard for you to assess something for the art it is without like, technically analyzing it.
100%, 100%. There's so many parallels that I want to draw here. I mean, the obvious one is like, you mentioned art, right? Like my sort of background, I did a ton of traditional art growing up, and you learn by imitation, right? It's like, wow, this shit is fire. And like, I want to aspire to be like that. I want to produce art like that. And you just sort of tinker until like your stuff gets closer and closer. And once you've explored enough of those, there's this moment where you have enough power to synthesize. Like you can now put the pieces together in a way that expresses what's in your own head. And the other thing about that, like not being able to appreciate it for what it is, like the thing that my friends and I always talk about is, I don't understand why people would want to spend the time and the money becoming a sommelier. Like you get so deep into wine, and then all of a sudden the simple joys of just cracking open like a $5 bottle of whatever, all of a sudden, you can't enjoy it with your friends anymore. All you're doing is shitting on it.
Totally. I totally understand that. But I think you touched on a very interesting point, like the ability to eventually synthesize your own ideas and put it like into creation. I think that's actually why a lot of people end their music production careers a lot earlier than ideal. And I think the reason why is because a lot of people get discouraged, whether it's, you're learning a lot of things at once, especially if you know nothing about music theory, and you're A, learning music theory, B, learning music production, and C, learning the software all at the same time. The combination of all of those three components is very, very stressful. And people just categorize it into music production, but in reality, they're all very different components. Like what we call the DAW, digital audio workstation, is basically, the canvas in which we create music in. And actually, I see a lot of artists, more established artists, be able to switch between DAWs very easily, because at that point, they know how to make music and they know the components of it. At that point, just relearning a software, or, where to find certain tools and stuff. Whereas somebody is starting fresh off the bat, like you have to realize like it's not just the software you're learning. Like, yes, you have to learn how to use the software, but be like what to do with it, what components to use. So because of that reason, I think a lot of people get discouraged very early on. And, and my only 2 cents there is, once you get past the hurdle and it stops becoming a game of like, okay, how do I tweak the software? How do I leverage this? It becomes like, all right, I know how to do it. I just want to get the idea down. It becomes way more fun. And I think that's true with anything you do.
Nice. Okay. I want to go back again to like your earliest days of like growth again at SC. You mentioned like walking down maybe like the frat halls and someone's like, Martin would never make it as a DJ, et cetera, et cetera.
Totally.
Like during that time, you're experimenting with projecting out like your tastes, you're mixing other people's stuff. At what point did you get the confidence to start sprinkling in some of your own original stuff and like your own personality?
So I would say like at the time, everybody and their moms wanted to be a tropical house DJ. Everybody wanted to be the next Kygo. I wanted to be the next Kygo.
Amen. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So like that was the stuff that I was experimenting with, like just like the varieties of those music. And actually, like I remember like the very first song I made, it was like kind of in the future bass style. Right after I saw like Lucid Child at Coachella, I remember like finishing the song, getting super excited about it, heading over to a friend's backyard party, unplugging the aux and plugging it in, and it just like completely changed the vibe of the party, and everyone's just like, "What the fuck is this?" Very defining moment. I was like, "All right, just kidding," unplugged right away. But a second more favorable moment I'd say is during my spring semester in which I had the music production minor. One of the main exercises was to complete a song end to end. And I'll be forever grateful about that class because it really forced me to, sit down, get all my ideas out, but actually finish a song end to end. I think that's the hardest part. A lot of artists are great at starting a song, getting ideas down, doing a drop, doing an intro, X, Y, and Z, but finishing a song is, I'd say exponentially harder than just getting one phrase of it because there's so many components and then you have to tie them all together.
Right.
So I'd say in that spirit, I did a what became a remix of Justin Bieber's song "Let Me Love You," which is a tropical house one.
Yeah.
And luckily, what was really cool was that spring semester, I was actually going to Cabo. And I, from the previous year, and through a couple of buddies who, who I guess were well connected in Cabo, they were able to connect me with like the DJ at Mango Deck there. And then he was like, yo, do you want to like, do a slot or something at Mango Deck? And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. And obviously, like, luckily, I always bring my laptop everywhere. And that's my recommendation to like DJs, like, bring your laptop, bring your USB, stay strapped just in case the opportunity comes up. So at this point, I was like, yeah, I'm super down to DJ at Mango Deck. And I think that was the very first moment I played one of my own, pieces in a public setting. And it actually did really well. It was like the perfect vibe for it. Tropical house, mixed into a set of like, I don't know, hip hop, old school Bon Jovi, what was it, Chainsmokers, like whatever the kids at Mango Deck wanted to hear, plus like my own stuff. And that was just the perfect opportunity to play that song. Unlike my first example at like, a frat rager, I threw out some future bass that like nobody wanted to hear. Mixed, adversely versus a tropical house remix of Justin Bieber at Mango Deck. It was literally perfect. And like, I'm not going to say anybody got super excited about the remix, but nobody said anything and they just kept vibing. And that's the best compliment you could have gotten. You know what I mean? Like, like, it's funny when someone tells me like, oh, this song like sounds like something I could hear on the radio. Like, that's a great compliment. It's enough to tell me that like it fits in with the stuff on the radio. So I think that, that's some of the first moments I think I started playing my own stuff out. And then eventually, as I kind of went on my career and my exploration with music production and actually figuring out like subgenres and stuff. Like, I think even when I first got into it, there's so many subgenres in EDM, like probably like hundreds that I don't even know anything about. But as I discovered those, I started to, looking at some of the artists that inspired me really. And eventually kind of went down that path more and started actually finding a niche or like a genre that I fit into. It started off with definitely future bass, and now it's more in kind of the melodic bass realm, but it's all kind of the same. And basically just identifying all of the artists, who fit within that realm and started curating my sounds towards that. So I would say since that happened, that was probably like end of 2017, early 2018 is when I really just started honing down on a specific realm of music that I really like to listen to. And then I started learning how to make that type of music instead of just like whatever I wanted to put on the DAW. And that's not that I had anything wrong with that. I think that was a great part for me to learn how to produce. Just opening up the DAW and trying to produce anything that I thought sounded good was a great way to get about being excited about it. But it's tough to be specific and intentional, right? If you don't have something in mind prior, whether it's, building a brand as an artist or even finishing that song, you have to kind of know what you want to do with it. Then obviously, let the song transform as you work on it. Right.
That makes sense. And so you graduate then from SC and then you're fully thrown into the world of tech. Like that track of your career alone is something to look up to, but now you're balancing both. Like at what points have you felt like those things sort of become contentious with one another, or are they more like harmonizing? Because maybe, I don't know, they balance each other out.
Sure. So I think I'll address kind of where they harmonize and then where they may conflict. I think in terms of harmony, I'm very, very fortunate to be, working in San Francisco at, a job that pays me in a way that can support my lifestyle. And why I'm very fortunate about that is because I know that's actually very rare in the music industry. Across anywhere you go, people who are trying to make the music, a lot of the mentality is there is no plan B. This is just a plan A. You know what I mean?
Right.
While I respect that a lot, and people who are doing that, all the props to you, that's a lot of risk that like personally is above my comfort level. And I think that, being able to work the hours that I do in kind of the environment I do gives me enough capital to invest into better equipment that some people can't do. And C, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck, hoping or wondering if this is going to be the last month I can afford rent or whatever, And I'm not saying everybody's doing that, but I'm saying it gives me the financial freedom that I don't have to rely on it with music. So for example, I remember, as I mentioned, when I was back in high school, I was very involved in music, just like my entire life. And I had a lot of really good friends who actually go into music, do very well. But I remember like the first couple of semesters as we were on like summer breaks and whatnot, like I'm not gonna say finding an internship was easy for me in the business/finance realm, but it was doable. It was monetizable. Whereas, there aren't quite a lot of internships or even early careers available for music educators or whatnot. And so that was a very eye-opening experience for me. And while they ended up doing completely fine, I think like that to me was why I was like, okay, at some point in my life, I want music to be involved, but that was never the priority until kind of later on.
Got it.
And I think, having the business and the startup tech side finance has given me a lot of opportunities financially, just freedom and flexibility that otherwise wouldn't. Now, adversely, obviously there's only so many hours in a day, right?
Right.
I think that at the end of the day, while, I want to grow both as much as possible, I've come to the realization, accepting that it's just not feasible. Like, for example, if there are busy seasons in my, 9 to 5 workday, I've accepted the fact that I can't just go home, work on music until 4 a.m. even if I want to, because then that, would potentially risk the other thing.
Right.
But, in the instances where I can work a 9 to 5, come home at 7, work on music till 10, 11, repeat, like those are the bulk of the days that I try to aim for.
Mm-hmm.
And, that being said, obviously weekends and nights are kind of my music time for that. And I think that having that realization that like, obviously my 9 to 5 is what pays the bills. So I kind of have to prioritize that. That's not to say I'm not focusing on my music, I'm working as hard as I can on it. But, if that has to take slightly second, I'm okay with that. And I think, with that outlook though, I think there's a lot of applicable skills. And I think there's a lot of translatable skills, actually. People ask me all the time, how do you go about getting shows? How do you get gigs? How do you connect, right?
Right.
And it's literally, to be honest, it's very similar to any networking I've done at, the Hilton for a Big Four company. Right, the only difference is you're not dressed up in a suit at a fancy hotel. You're backstage taking shots with someone. But it's strikingly very similar. It's all about networking at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's being able to capitalize on those opportunities. I can't tell you how many close friends I've met who've, really been drivers of my music career, just like backstage casually because somebody wants to take a shot with you. Yeah. Adversely, I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone just completely screw up a relationship because they just, couldn't handle the alcohol or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how many similarities I draw between both. And I think it's definitely complementary as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think the biggest takeaway there is like, people who you can look up to who are like making moves, making progress, doing the thing, it's still calculated risk taking, like it's not reckless. It's not, anything. Yeah. It's very calculated.
I think a very clear example of that is like when COVID happened last year, right? It's obviously still COVID, but I think, the thing is for a lot of these touring DJs, the idea is once you become a touring DJ, you've made it in a sense where, you can now live off of an income doing music when you're touring, because that's how you make money. There's not really any money in streaming revenues anymore, right?
Sure.
Spotify, Apple Music are really taking all those cuts. But the paradigm shift is, back in the day, you were paying for music, whether through buying CDs or buying music on Apple, and concert tickets were very cheap because people were going on tour to promote album sales. Right. And that's why festival tickets are getting so expensive now, because it's complete opposite. Now booking fees are so pricey because no one's making music off selling music, right? You're making albums to promote your tour to sell tickets. And that being said, last year when all of these artists basically put their life savings towards their next tour, and everything gets canceled, what happens? So to your point, yes, there's always risk, especially I thought that if you became a touring DJ, you basically made it. Last year proved that very, very wrong.
Right. Gotcha. And okay, I mean, well, speaking of calculated risk, a big part of de-risking a lot of that ambiguity is by signing with a label, right? You sign with Wave Music. Before we get into maybe like just high level, like how the economics of that kind of thing work, how does that even happen? Like, do you approach them? Do they approach you? Like, what's good with that?
So first, I guess I want to clarify what signing really even means, right?
Yeah.
So I personally did not sign my future catalog to Wave. I signed a specific piece of work to them. And this is actually a very new model that a lot of labels are adopting. So historically, if you had to sign to a label, you basically either got a bunch of money up front or at least committed X amount of your future catalog to them for them to distribute on your behalf and basically just own partial ownership over.
Right.
So I didn't do that. I actually just sold, I partnered with them to basically sign and distribute my specific body of work. So technically, if I want to go back and work with my next release, I totally could, but I don't have to, which I think is the great part of this model. It's completely flexible and allows artists, especially within the EDM realm with so many sub labels, up and coming mom and pop labels to explore and really, work with whoever works best for you.
Got it.
Now, how does signing a label work? So first off, I guess, what is a label, right? A label, really, their core job is to take a piece of music and distribute it and get it to as many ears as possible. So in return for that, they get a cut of, royalties, streaming revenues and whatnot. But in exchange, they're offering marketing support, X, Y, and Z, and basically just helping you do outreach that you typically don't have through other channels. Now, how do you go about finding a label? Well, first you have to know what labels are, right? You have to know what labels exist. I'd say, there's 4 or 5 major labels in the world, like the Columbias and the Sonys and that in the world. And to get to them is, I'd say, virtually impossible unless somebody. But enter, EDM labels. There's so many great EDM labels that are up and coming and leveraging, their either YouTube presence, Spotify presence, or connections to help artists. And there's also genre specific labels, which I think it's wonderful. And, having that niche, for example, then a dubstep label could say, we know where all the dubstep fans are. We know who to target to. So basically, I'd say as a producer, you have to go and do a little research, right? There's a lot of great ways to do that. For example, you can go to your favorite songs on Spotify and then click on the info and click show credits. It'll actually show you which label distributed it. So that's one way of sourcing it. And basically, after you've identified all those labels, is the outreach. This is a pretty stressful part. And this is another synonymous thing I tie to the corporate world. It's like cold calling, cold emailing.
Right.
But most of these labels have a a submission link or an email. But chances are 85-90% you're never going to hear back. And if you do, it's within like 4 months. At that point, you're sitting on a song forever. So the name of the game really is finding what we call an A&R internally. Basically having someone connect you. That's basically an in, just like the corporate world. Like you can cold email anybody, right? But like chances are it's going to go through, the pile of 5,000 resumes is very high unless you know somebody on the inside.
Yeah.
So at that point, you just reach out, you send your catalog, and you basically express interest to say, hey man, this is a demo that I'm working on. Would you be interested in signing it? And most labels typically have feedback. It's either like, now we're good, or, thank you, but no thanks kind of thing. But if they do want it, most of the time they'll be like, okay, we love this, but X, Y, and Z, and you just kind of work with them. At that point, you're good. Like, if they start giving you feedback and they start saying, we'd love to sign this, but then at that point you just got to fix whatever it is that they want to tweak with. And sometimes I could even say like, I kind of want to keep it, and they respect that as an artist preference. And then kind of from there you sign an engagement, and I'd say from there you just work on a timeline and a release. I think that's the value of the label. And I think the biggest mistake a lot of up and coming producers do is they don't do that kind of outreach. I'm not saying you need a label, but I'm saying you shouldn't finish a song and post it on Spotify and SoundCloud tomorrow. Just like Apple would never finish an iPhone and release it the day after. It requires beta, a lot of preparation, legal work, marketing, and a lot of preparation that goes to making sure that the moment your song is released, it's going to reach as many people as possible, as fast as possible, right? Like the bigger the splash, the bigger the ripples kind of thing.
I love that. I love that analogy to, launching a product, startup world. Like that's the world that I live in as well. But yeah, it's never that black and white. It's not just like, prototype and then boom. There's so much behind the scenes and, riding the whiz of distributors, of like people who can help sort out the marketing, who have the expertise elsewhere. If you just have, a sick proof of concept technology, it's not enough.
Totally. And it's funny you say that, because I actually always compare music or like being a producer to a startup. Kind of understood the industry. And another misconception I would say is that I firmly believe that the producer, like myself in the music, we're not the CEO of the brand. We're just the product. The CEO of the brand is really the manager, whoever's owning it, right? Like we're the product, just like how the label is the marketing arm and whatnot. And really, obviously, product and CEO and strategy will work together. But there's so many other components in the success of music that like people don't really think about. Like the artist doesn't own everything. I have to work with management to make sure they're okay with stuff, they agree with stuff. There has to be legal aspects, whether it's contracts. At the end of the day, like I firmly believe the producer is really just a product. Like I want to make sure I'm making what I feel is true to myself, but also what it's not going to flop totally if I post it out to the world.
Right. Okay. So you broke down what the situation is sort of like at this moment. Can you draw a line from where we're at right now to like a world where you are pursuing this thing full time? I don't know if that is your ambition, like if that is
Yeah.
what you're trying to skate towards, but where is that path, and sort of like what are the milestones in order to be able to take that leap?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You asked me that, and I feel like it's one of those things I mentioned where like I can think about what I want, but I wouldn't consider them necessarily milestones or really. I don't have a
Mm,
point in time in which I say like, oh, I'm going to hit this many streams or make this much money doing music, in which I quit corporate life and do it. Like, I don't have that plan.
got it.
I if I get there, I'll let you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that being said, I can tell you what's next. And, what the goal is, and so I think
Hmm.
coming fresh out of the kind of the COVID environment where everyone's been at home urging to go to stuff, we strategically held on to all of our music last year. So the beauty, and I hate that it happened because of COVID, but I think because of that, there was really no pressure for myself to or my team to release music, because we really wanted to save all the catalog for when shows happen. Granted, if you were a big artist, you already had an obligation to keep your fans engaged. By no means did I feel like I was a big artist or anything. I had a program of fans, and I was building that, especially with producers and stuff as COVID went on.
Yeah.
But that flexibility really allowed me to just work on music and build a sustainable catalog of 15, 20 songs or so. That once I start releasing music, I have songs ready to go. Continue to release them every couple of months or so. Continue to work with labels X, Y, and Z.
Got it.
And so, where that leads me to today is, I think with the launch of the EP recently, we saw a lot of success in converting brand new people who have never heard the Muse brand into listeners, right?
Yeah.
People from, obviously our main hubs are still going to be California, New York, metropolitan areas of the US, but people even, internationally, basically every country you can think of, every country with listeners that I didn't even know melodic bass music existed in, kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, my team and I, thinking about strategically, the next step is, okay, well, how do we translate these listeners who clearly love our music into loyal fans? What I mean by that is convert them to concert goers, festival buyers, merch buyers, kind of stuff. Like, how do we hit that second entry point in which we're converting people who clearly love our music to people who are loyal to our brand? And that really is just attributed by, working with talent buyers to get booked for more shows. So like I had a show last weekend and had another show 2 months ago in April, opening for Midas, which is perfect because that happened actually right after EP released. It's the same genre of music. And so, open kind of my music up to a brand new set of fans.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the goal. And we're definitely, aiming to get booked for a lot more shows for this year and next year. In that we can not only find new fans, but really have an entry point for those fans who kind of heard about the Muse stuff through Twitter, Spotify, Instagram, whatever. We actually connect now, like be like loyal Muse fans. Once I have my own shows, hopefully, which isn't in the far distant future, people who'd be willing to come for the Muse brand, not necessarily for anybody else on there.
100%. I love that. And something that I want to touch a little more on is you had mentioned, okay, so there are these sort of classic revenue streams, right? Obviously the music itself, the streaming, but concerts is big now, and obviously merch sales. But there are also some emerging sort of non-obvious ways that you can engage and like monetize with your fans. And you have a Discord channel. You've also done some like clever sort of growth hacking, like remix competitions and stuff. Can you speak to, some of the other creative ways that you've been engaging with fans?
Okay. So I think my Discord channel, this incredible community, I started it with the intention, like end goal, obviously wanted to make a community for the Muse brand, right? It's not even just like a fan base for Martin, but like really a community for the Muse brand, people who believe in the music, people who want to learn from the music and really connect with each other.
Right.
I thought about, okay, well, how do we get there, right? Obviously, I can't just make a Discord and expect fans to flock in, like, oh my God, we love Muse kind of thing. That's just not going to happen. I didn't even have fans. You know what I mean? So I thought about, what my niche was and how I would be able to capitalize on a small group of core people first. And that to me actually was inviting all of my closest producer friends, people I knew who were great at producing, who had a lot of knowledge, who wanted to share and just basically nerd out about production.
Yeah.
So that's when it started off. I think like last August, so almost a year, I guess last August. And then eventually I started inviting other people. And, I would always get DMs from questions from like, up and coming producers who like, how do you get a vocalist, or what do they get this track? You know what I mean? And I just can't respond to all of them. There's just so many. Yeah. And so what's the beauty of this is now I have, this core group of really talented producers that I can trust, with their knowledge and their wealth of experience. And it's almost like everyone's kind of jumping in, answering these questions now. And then eventually, that kind of grew into people who are really interested in kind of the Muse brand now. So I went ahead and started, putting in more show announcements, stream announcements, just general Muse announcements. I think kind of one thing led to another. So you mentioned, the remix competition. So that was the most recent influx of a lot of people we saw, was because we decided to use our Discord channel as kind of the home base for our remix competition. Yeah. In order to enter, all you had to do was join the channel and then basically download what we call stems, or the samples related to the song, or the vocal set track, really just engage the other people in the competition. So that was a cool place for that. Not only were people posting their submissions, people were like giving each other shout outs, learning from each other. And that brought a whole new, cohort of producers that either heard about my competition through an ad or through, another friend, or really just wanted, to download it to get the vocals for my songs. I used to do that all the time. Like, I would literally just go join remix competitions because as a producer, up and coming, I didn't really have access to clean, high quality vocals. And so I would go just rip them off of remix competitions and just like practice with that. So whatever their entry point is. Like now, I'm so glad I did that because, as I mentioned before, like it was mind blowing. Like the talent, like the level of talent, the level of talent from all the submissions from literal 14, 15-year-olds from whoever knows in the world is insane. And some of these people have like 15 followers on SoundCloud, maybe 50 or 100. Yeah, it's just mind blowing because that gives me so much more motivation and instills my belief in like what my Discord community is for. Like literally, I want to build a collaborative place to not only learn from each other but support each other. I understand that it's not just the art, but it's the business. Yeah, a lot of people either they're younger or inexperienced and don't have the tech savvy, don't really get that. And I think the Discord community really promotes answering all the right questions you may need, besides just finishing a song, uploading it on SoundCloud kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's something so beautiful about, like passing on the opportunities and like access a network and, basically just conversation onto people who are earlier on in the game. Totally. You were just there. And now all of a sudden, all of these people learning off of each other.
I still consider myself there. But
Yeah. All right. So we're talking about all these exciting things happening for you right now. And like from outside looking in, incredible. You've probably accumulated, millions of streams across all of these different platforms. But from your point of view, inside looking out, like what are some of the biggest stressors for you at this stage of the game? And like, what is the anxiety of like, what's coming next? Do I have to perform?
I would consider them more opportunities than stress points. And I say that because having gone through just very recently, a very big release cycle, I learned so many things about pre-release, post-release, who to reach out to, contacts to reach. It took a lot of cold emailing, most of which I've never heard back from, but, I'm excited because the next time I go about, I've already cut down my list of who not to reach out to, but it'll make my life so much more efficient because now I know, the right people who are receptive to it, the right people to reach out to, the people who I've already connected with. So from a music standpoint, I consider it more opportunities than anything because we definitely have more music coming. We have a remix. So the full remix package is coming out actually next month, exactly a month, July 9th from now. Yeah. But besides that, we have other music kind of like going. And I'm really excited about that because we just get the opportunity to redo a lot of, the distribution and outreach prior for our EP, but be way more efficient about it. And, we didn't have much bandwidth to last time because really we're just a 3-man team. It's myself, my manager, and my other manager. So it's a pretty small function. We're not a massive team with, a bunch of interns doing outreach by any means.
Yeah.
Now I think kind of, the next milestone and stress point for shows is really just starting to make those introductions with the talent buyers, right? Talent buyers are venue-specific people who just book talent. They work with promoters like Insomniac, X, Y, and Z to host the show. In reality, when you see big DJs going on tours, most of the time, it's the manager working with some kind of talent buyer who, works for the specific venue, and they're reaching out and saying, hey, do you have any tour dates in our area? We'd love to book you for X, Y, and Z. So really just getting those intros. But it's happening, obviously, as shows continue to happen. We have a couple of shows in California for the next 2 months that I'm pretty excited to announce in the coming weeks, actually. Besides that, yeah, I'd say just continuing to build traction, especially in the live environment, and really just converting, listeners to genuine music supporters or fans, and who believe in, the music, the mission, and more so just like, appreciate what we stand for.
That's incredible, dude. I mean, that's a very healthy mentality to have. Like, off the back of these early wins, it's not like, oh, this daunting pressure to perform bigger, better next. It's just like, fuck, this is an exciting time. Go, go, go. I think that's the right way to go about it.
Yeah, man. Obviously, with shows happening, nature is healing in a sense. Like, we're seeing show announcements happen literally every other day.
Yeah,
it's exciting, man. Like, it's motivation whenever I see one of those lineups,
right?
And our name is not on it. Like, it's just like, all right, like that's the kind of thing. It's not discouraging. It's motivating, and I'm actually very happy. Like, this time around, how I kind of know where we are as a brand, as an artist too, is that a lot of our close producer friends, who, I'm not going to say we're at the same level, but, in the same realm, are starting to get booked on these really, really big lineups. They're close to the bottom of the list, but it's happening. And that's really motivation, for my team and I to say, okay, like, we're in the same realm of friends, like we can do it too. We know our fans love the music, we know that people appreciate it or resonate with it. Let's capitalize on that. Let's prove to the promoters who are booking and talent buyers that, like, people want to see the music brand there. And basically, more importantly, every live show we get, capitalize on making it the best possible show. I'm never gonna half-ass a show, because my philosophy is really, it doesn't matter if it's your fifth time seeing me or your first time seeing me. I want to make sure, like, at every entry point, I want you to see me again. I don't want you to see, like, oh, I've seen a music show already. I don't want to see it again, because it's always gonna be different. Obviously gonna always play my songs, but there's always gonna be different spice to it.
That's incredible, dude. And I love the fact that you're pointing out, people within your inner circle, or like you're within the same realm. People are at different stages, but you're all on the come up together. And it's the ability to see so transparently someone else make the move, that the next sort of milestone that you're gunning towards is like, if them, why not me? And that's sort of the essence of this podcast. Like, I really just want to highlight people that are in their early days, like maybe fresh out of school type of thing. And like, yo, if them, why not me? Like, why can't I dream that big and just start making moves?
Like I said, I firmly believe if you have the mentality where you're more competitive, and it's okay to be competitive, but in a way that's not supportive or collaborative with your friends, the music industry is not for you. It's 100% a collaborative space. And like I said, most of the guys I meet backstage taking shots, ripping shots with, are the guys that are helping my career every Sunday. They're the guys who have introduced me to stuff, booked me for shows. And the ones who've really just escalated me from a nobody to kind of becoming a somebody now.
Right. That's amazing. Okay. So I guess you just touched on this, but like, biggest support systems, people also in the game, helping, grabbing your hand, pulling you up, shots up back. What about family, friends from school or when you grew up type of thing? What are your solid support systems? Navigating this?
Obviously, family and friends are very important. On the friend side, I'd say there's for sure. So I was very lucky after I graduated college. There's a core friends of 5 or 6 people who I moved up from USC to LA, in LA to SF. We got like a 6-person house. We basically, they were there for my first show with 2 people, my second show with 0 people, the shows even last weekend with, hundreds, not thousands of people kind of thing. Those are the guys who had to listen to my music at 3 a.m., play the same song over for 9 months.
Nice.
From one kick beat to a finished song, or one clap sample to a finished song after like 12 months kind of thing. So those are the guys, who
I love that.
kind of stuck with it. Hopefully it wasn't, really a force of having to go out of the way to support, because we are obviously still friends that hang out on a day-to-day basis kind of thing. But it does help. It's really cool having friends kind of see where it started, especially, in the phases where even before I was doing show, it was like, oh, I'm interested in doing music kind of thing. And, they were around to hear other people either kind of gawk at it, laugh about it, clown about it, and then see the transformations happen after that to where we are now today.
That's incredible. And I don't know if you could just point to one name who you'd say you draw a lot of inspiration from. It doesn't even have to be in the music industry,
Sure.
but like just like, oh, like I want to model some of my personal values or behaviors towards this and then be able to achieve.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if there's one specific artist. There's a lot of people I'd give credit to in the industry for sure. There's really a culmination of like people supporting me, either little or big, kind of along the way. Whether it was seeing high school friends make it, or whether it really is just meeting, you know, one of my closest friends who's an artist manager for a really incredible group of very, you know, doing well DJs. Literally met him backstage at a show. The dude was like, "Hey man, add me on Snapchat. Let's take a shot." Like that was literally the intro.
Right.
He's one of the best friends, like literally in the music industry up till today. And I'm so thankful for him. His name is Justin because he's helped me with so much stuff. But like those are kind of the instances where like I'm telling you, like you have to really understand every opportunity that comes your way.
Yeah.
And you know, I think success is when sheer luck meets preparation. Like I was telling someone in my Discord the other day, you can have Shalizi, the guy who manages Marshmallow and Jaws and Slushy and all of them, knock on your door and be like, "Hey man, what's up? Got any music?"
Yeah.
If you don't got any music, like then you really just blew an opportunity, right?
Rip.
And I firmly believe that, you know, if you keep grinding away, despite, you know, all those nights of not seeing success or not seeing your numbers shoot up, your moment will come. And, you know, if you're ready, you have the catalog to prove it and, you know, all of the support to prove it, then you'll be able to capitalize on that moment and basically seize it.
I love that. All right, dude. Well, I just want to thank you again so much for doing this. Like,
yeah,
you know,
thank you for having me.
Also, just starting out, I do this all the time anyway. I love talking to my interesting friends, working on interesting shit. And, you know, you're a prime example of that. Do you want to tell the people watching, however many, I don't know, like hundreds maybe, how to find you?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can find me on basically any social media, any streaming outlet. I go by the name of Muse, spelled MVSE. So yeah, definitely check me out, check my music out. You know, if you're in California, I'll be announcing some show dates very, very soon that I'm super excited about. I'm very excited to meet everyone, you know, anyone who's willing to reach out. I try to respond to as many DMs as possible. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in music at all, or interested in learning more about production or myself, I also have a Discord channel you can find pretty easily.
Nice. All right, dude. That's it.
Oh, all right, man. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, dude. All right. Clean.
I became exactly what I wanted to. I became a millionaire at 22.